sports note for Saturday night, April 13th, and the college basketball season is officially over. Congratulations to both the UConn Huskies men and the South Carolina women for winning the national championships. For UConn, it's their second consecutive, the first time since 2006 2007 for when Florida did it. And South Carolina, it's their second title in 3 years, and the third consecutive year that a team from the SEC has won it when LSU beat Iowa last year. But trying to actually steal some thunder, as usual, is John Calipari. And Calipari announced on Sunday night, even before the championship game, that he was leaving Kentucky after 15 years to take the head coaching job at Arkansas. The Arkansas job opened up after Eric Musselman left after, I want to say, 6 seasons. To go coach at USC, as USC's jumping to the Big Ten. So Calipari actually took a pretty significant pay cut for the opportunity to go to Fayetteville. Now, if Kentucky would have fired Calipari after Calipari went out in the first round of the NCAA tournament as a 4 or higher seed for the second time in 3 years, it would have cost the university $33 million in buyout money. Calipari's only going to make $8.5 million at Arkansas, as if he really needs it, as he's got very close ties with billionaire John H. Tyson, who's a heavy contributor to Arkansas University. So where all of this came from in such short notice, you had to know the writing was on the wall, especially with the fact that Calipari, for as much run as he got, did not have the greatest track record. He's only got one national championship. He hasn't been to a Final Four in a number of years, which actually means now he's got something in common with Arkansas. Calipari's only got one national title to his credit, and that was in 2012. Arkansas's only got one national title in program history, and that was Nolan Richardson in '94. And then Arkansas was looking for back-to-back and got stopped by UCLA in the '95 final. That was the Ed O'Bannon, the Tyus Edney squad. But Calipari leaving, not that big of a surprise, because Kentucky, he's basically relegated from a blue blood to really nothing more than a basketball vocational school, where look across the NBA right now with some of the names that you have out there. A lot of the good young talent within the last maybe 7-8 years, a lot of those names are Kentucky Wildcats. The thing is, you got to dig deeper a little bit though, and see how many of them really had an immediate impact, and how many of them really kind of needed a little bit of time to develop into some stars. The first one that comes to mind right now is Karl Anthony Towns with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Because you really have to start looking at some of these Kentucky players as, with them being in the NBA, how long did they actually stay in college? And I know things have kind of laxed a little bit. Players may actually go play overseas. There's the G League. There's the one and done rule in college. You can't jump straight from high school any longer. But that's essentially what Kentucky's turned into, and that's going to be the job of new head coach Mark Pope, to kind of bring them back down to earth. Now, Mark Pope was the captain of Kentucky's 1995 national championship team, but he certainly was not their first choice after Calipari left. Now, with Calipari leaving, naturally, they wanted a job this massive to go get somebody filled right away. But Billy Donovan of the Chicago Bulls did not want the job. And Nate Oates at Alabama did not want the job. Dan Hurley at UConn flat out turned him down. There were several other names that withdrew. Scott Drew at Baylor, Jay Wright formerly at Villanova. So you had to actually go down to a second tier to be able to see who would want to come in and take that level of pressure. And that's where Pope's name came up as, again, a Kentucky alum, but it's not something. I don't see Mark Pope doing the kind of job coming in um, that's that somebody with the caveat of a Calipari did. It's going to be something where it's going to take a couple of years. Tubby Smith did not win right out of the chute. Calipari did not win right out of the chute. Took him a little time to get adjusted. So I see this is where Kentucky's probably going to be a tournament team, but it's something where they're going to need to rebuild how they recruit. Because let's be honest, there's a lot of kids that are going to want to come to Kentucky for the chance of playing at Kentucky, but now that Calipari's gone, you're not going to be able to get a lot of the NIL money because you're not going to be a forefront for a national championship, at least over the course of the next few years. This is not going to be a scenario like what John Shire fell into taking over at Duke for Coach K, because John Shire was an assistant under Coach K. This when you see somebody from a smaller school, and I don't want to actually say that BYU is a smaller school because they play in a conference that typically gets more than one team into the tournament every year. But something like what Shaka Smart did with VCU, to be able to turn that into a couple of jobs and then eventually land in Marquette, where he's one of probably the top 10 he's certainly a top 10 coach in the country as it stands right now, even though they've disappointed by not getting to a Final Four the last couple of years when they were heavily favored, whether they were on a 1, 2, or 3 line. For every Shaka Smart or his name is eluding me at the moment, TJ Otzelberger, or a Dan Hurley, where they actually come up from the smaller schools and then build that school into a powerhouse. You've got a Stan Heath, a Steve Lavin, somebody I don't want to say close to me, but that I'm a lot more familiar with was Rolly Massimino. Remember taking Villanova to the national championship back in the I want to say it was '85, and then essentially coaching down to lowly Cleveland State and never got to an NCAA tournament in any of his tenure there. Got his 500th win, effectively retired at Cleveland State after he was bought out by multiple disappointing seasons. But this is where there's two different sides to this coin. That Pope's coming into a very high pressure situation, and you hope with how well he knows the Kentucky program and recruiting, having been a head coach at BYU himself. Although he did not get out of the first round this year, as they were upset by Duquesne in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So he's got that in common with Calipari, so it's almost like status quo at this particular point. But you would think that Pope could actually start recruiting, but he's not. He's not going to see a lot of the top tier talent coming in, especially now that you got Tennessee and Alabama that have kind of now made themselves the cream of the SEC crop. You've got Oklahoma and Texas coming in. Texas is a little bit better of a basketball school than Oklahoma would be, so is that going to affect pulling in some of that talent? Especially now also with USC and UCLA, two very good basketball schools, jumping to the Big Ten to seeing the competition there. But for Calipari, this is him taking a bit of a step back because, yes, Arkansas did miss the tournament this year. Arkansas did make the tournament the past 3 seasons before that under Musselman, and Musselman got them to an two Elite Eights and a Sweet 16 before finishing 16 and 17 this year and missing out on the postseason entirely. So, in a what have you done for me lately type business, Musselman had to know that, for a disappointing season like this, that his name was going to get brought up with a major program. Now USC is not a major program. They're not a blue blood like a Kentucky is, like a Marquette. So his name was not going to be linked to an opening there. But USC is in a very high profile market. I believe he went to USC. He's familiar, having played basketball in the NBA out on the West Coast in California at some point during his career. But Calipari may be able to pull some of those players away from Kentucky for recruiting. You might see a couple of those players transfer out and join him in Fayetteville. Um, but it's definitely not something where you're going to see, a middle of the road Arkansas suddenly jump up there and land, a 5 seed or better when this time next year in the for the NCAA tournament. So let me know what you guys think. What do you make of this move? What do you think actually works out better? Musselman going to USC, Calipari going to Arkansas, or Mark Pope coming in and taking over at Kentucky. Mike and I are going to be with you a little bit later on tonight on the Wise Guys, and I will be back with you guys next week. Take care.